Grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Our text for today is from John chapter 11. We have heard Jesus speak of riddles in the darkness with Nicodemus. We've heard him talk with the woman at the well to give her hope. We've heard Jesus give the blind man sight and bring in new life. But here we see the crescendo. Here we see the ultimate point of Jesus coming to earth. That great enemy, death. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints, as we prayed in the intro a little while ago. Death for Martha and Mary was no faraway thing. It was very, very real. We don't know how old they were, but clearly they are racked with grief. They don't know what this means. They can't kind of put this together into their life. Death doesn't fit. Death isn't right. Death is not how things are supposed to be. Death messes everything up. But there it is. The brother Lazarus had died. And so Jesus comes to them, not in their time, but in his time. And in that short duration, Lazarus died. This is kind of how it seems that death always comes. It always comes too soon, not at the right time. There's always another word to be said. There's always something it feels is left unresolved or undone. But Jesus, of course, comes at just the right time, because he is, after all, the Lord of life. He comes to bring hope, but they can't quite grasp what he's saying. Both Martha and Mary, well, they can get this notion of the resurrection at the last day. They can understand that. But to believe that Jesus' words, this man standing right before them, that the words coming out of his lips would actually give life, well, that's a little bit much, isn't it? I mean, really? Death is right there. It's not going away. We believe in the resurrection at the last day, Lord. And so do we all. But it is ultimately about death and resurrection. Son of man, can these bones live? This is really the very heart of the Christian life. Do you believe that these dead bones can live? Do you believe that you have life in you? That God, who raised Jesus from the dead, can raise you from the dead? And those you love? And indeed, that he can call the gospel forth to the whole world. Because his breath brings life. That life that once worked life first in the dust of creation, now, even today, brings life. Real, abundant life. Eternal life. So Jesus comes to the tomb. You can almost imagine Martha kind of moving from trying to be pious to getting a little nervous, right? Lord, he's going to stink. You don't want to see this death. This death is a little bit too real for your kind of sensitive rabbi nostrils. But Jesus is not afraid, because death has no power over him. Roll away the tomb, he tells them. Kind of reminds you of another death that is coming, doesn't it? Roll away the tomb. Everyone's standing around. They don't know what's going to happen, why. But the Word made flesh speaks word yet again. Lazarus, come forth. It's a pretty one-sided conversation, frankly. Most of the people there would not really expect Lazarus to kind of pop up and answer. He is dead, after all. But when the Lord of life, the creator of heaven and earth, calls, even death itself must answer. And so he calls, Lazarus, come forth. And the one who was dead got up. He still got his burial cloths on, a napkin on his face. Kind of awkward, I think. I think it was all right with that. Lazarus, come forth. And it is at that very moment that the authorities decide that Jesus has to die. And Lazarus. It's one thing to argue about the Sabbath. It's another thing to speak with these women at wells and in other places, mingle with sinners. It's another thing to heal the blind and the deaf. But raise somebody from the dead? There's no getting around that. There's no kind of talking that away. The one who is dead is now alive. That messed everything up for them. They could not believe that anyone can do this thing. And so even though their eyes themselves can see that Lazarus, who was dead, who had the stink of death on him, is now alive, even though they could see it, they could not believe. And for that, Jesus had to die. This is the turning point in the gospel. This is the fulcrum upon which the whole story hinges. Once Lazarus is raised from the dead, Jesus' fate is sealed in the eyes of the leaders. He has to die, and if we were to read on, we would learn they were going to kill Lazarus too, because he had the audacity to listen to the word of life that called him to life. Outrageous, really. Don't you know that it's not your job to rise from the dead? Well, you can just imagine Lazarus saying, take it up with him. I had nothing to do with it. I was dead, and now I'm alive. So, you now, who have the Spirit of God in you, who are washed in holy waters, who eat and drink of his body and blood, you now have that life in you. St. Paul reminds us that if the Spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is in you, then that same Spirit will raise you from the dead. That is our hope. That is our very foundation as Christians. That God, who raised Jesus from the dead, now dwells in us, poor sinners, dead in trespasses and sins, as St. Paul would say elsewhere. And because that Spirit dwells in you, you have something afar off. You have life here, now, in this place. And with that life comes hope. And hope is a powerful thing. And this hope is that the one who raised Jesus from the dead will raise you from the dead and will raise your mother and father and your grandparents and your Aunt Matilda and your friend with cancer and whomever else it is, and you all have them. So do I. This God will raise them from the dead too. It doesn't really matter that some don't believe. It doesn't matter that some are going to be angry or frustrated or whatever, that you have this hope in this crazy message. Because you were dead. Now you live. And if anyone has a problem with that, they can take it up with Jesus. In his name. Amen. And now the peace of God, which passes all understanding, keep your hearts and minds in true faith to life everlasting. Amen. Amen. Right.